She was boxed in, no warning, no explanation, just the silence of betrayal and the sound of incoming fighters. The warning lit up her console before she even heard the radio. 2 F-16s ghosts in the sky, dropped out of the clouds and locked onto her 6 like hawks in a coordinated dive. No chatter, no transponder sync, just authority in their formation and finality in their tone. Unknown at 10, you are in violation of classified airspace. Follow us immediately, or we will engage. Captain Maria Vasquez felt the canyon tighten. Around her like a vice, her 10 warthog growled under her grip, steady and stubborn, a beast built for war. Not for show, but in that moment, she wasn't sure what kind of war she was in. This route, Ghost Protocol. They told her it didn't officially exist, that her mission was training, that silence was survival. But now her own people were hunting her, and she couldn't say a word. She gripped the controls tighter. This wasn't a drill. These pilots didn't know who she was, and she couldn't tell them. Couldn't break silence. Couldn't reveal the kind of training that had no name. Every twist of the canyon, every sandstone scar, she knew by heart. She'd flown this stretch for 6 months, memorizing thermals and echoes, every updraft and hard bank. It was muscle memory now. But even muscle couldn't outrun 2 Falcons. The Warthog wasn't fast. It was never meant to be. It was a survivor ugly. Honest, brutal. The kind of machine that kept flying after prettier ones fell from the sky. Maria respected that. Maybe it reminded her of herself. Still, the F-16S matched her wings. 1 left, 1 right. Professional. Silent. Unyielding. She tried. 1 call sign. 1 thread of hope. This is Warthog 77. Unauthorized training mission. Request you verify with command. No room for trust. Not even. In her voice, the reply came back like steel. Negative. No training missions authorized in this sector. Divert immediately. No deviation, no hesitation. These weren't rookies. Her options narrowed. Every maneuver she considered ended in fire or fallout. There was no way out, only forward, into whatever this was. The canyon widened. The open desert blinked into view vast, cracked, endless. Her real objective sat somewhere out there, a target. Complex hidden among mesas. It was supposed to be a simple test precision strikes. No witnesses, extract unseen. But now, all that was ashes. Maria didn't move like someone about to surrender. She moved like someone choosing which hill to die on. She set her jaw. The radio crackled again. Warthog 77, turn heading 270. Begin descent, landing site 15 miles. A command, not a request. She complied, not because she trusted them, but because this felt bigger than her. She'd seen Black Ops twist good intentions into shadows before. But this, being intercepted by her own country mid-training. Something was wrong. And the worst part? She wasn't even sure she disagreed with them. She touched down on a runway that shouldn't have existed. One that wasn't on any satellite map. Fresh asphalt, hidden bunkers, black SUVs fanned out from nowhere. And then the snipers appeared. Maria didn't flinch. Her hands worked through shutdown as if this was normal. Like this wasn't a trap, or a test, or both. She scanned rooftops. Read angles, no insignia, no name tags, no mistakes. Every person here knew exactly where to stand and how to fire. The voices in her radio were gone now. Static and silence, except one. Warthog 77. Remain in your aircraft until instructed otherwise. Compliance is mandatory. Different voice, heavy, final. Like gravel dragged over bone. She reached once more for her handler. Silence. Then the signal died, cut mid-transmission. Jammed. They had just erased her from the sky. And in that heat, alone in the cockpit, Maria realized something terrifying. This hadn't been a mistake. They had planned for her. The only question now was why. He was just a silhouette at first. A man in a suit, flanked by weapons that didn't lower. Not yet. but it was the way he walked that told her everything. Maria stayed still in the cockpit, her eyes tracking the black SUVs converging on her. Warthog, like wolves, the desert heat warped the distance, made the vehicles dance in mirage shimmer, but the movement, sharp, intentional, told her this wasn't a scramble. This was rehearsed. Someone had waited for her. As her engines wound down, the silence grew louder, the kind of silence that carries weight, the kind that holds secrets. Her hand hovered over the canopy latch. Orders were to wait, but instincts said move. She didn't. Instead, she watched the figures dismount. Black tactical gear, no unit patches, no names. Just faces hidden behind visors and weapons held with confidence. Not bravado, special operations, or something darker. The kind of people that existed in deniable layers. A voice cracked over the radio again. Clearer this time. Not aggressive. Cold. Captain Vasquez, welcome to your debriefing. Debriefing? That wasn't what this felt like. Maria unlatched the canopy. Slowly. Carefully. As it hissed open, the desert heat surged in. A wave of dry weight that made her skin feel like paper under flame. Her boots met the tarmac with a solid thunk. 6 seconds later, the suited man reached her. His face was calm, clean-shaven, government, but his eyes looked at her like she was a problem that didn't fit into any folder on his tablet. She didn't salute, neither did he. Captain Vasquez, he said again, quieter this time, as if the title itself needed confirming. We need to talk now, before she could speak. Another sound interrupted, a helmet falling. She turned. The lead F-16 pilot had just frozen in place. His helmet rolled across the concrete. His eyes, wide behind the flight mask, were locked on one thing. Her tail number, F810965. Maria watched. Confusion rippled through him like a short circuit. His face drained of color. The second pilot, younger, jogged toward him, then stopped mid-stride. He saw it too. They both stared, not at her, at the number, like it meant something awful. One of them whispered, barely audible, but it carried. That's the ghost bird. Then both turned to Maria, and the fear wasn't hidden. Now, she stepped down the last rung of the ladder, her boots touching earth with finality. No one moved. Weapons lowered, not in surrender, in hesitation. This wasn't discipline anymore. It was disbelief. She opened her mouth. Her voice was steady. What's wrong with my tail number? No one answered. Why are you looking at me like that? The lead pilot, older, weathered, a combat face, stepped forward, hesitant, as if nearing something sacred and dangerous. Your name? He asked. Say your name. Captain Maria Vasquez. Call sign Ghost. She didn't mean to say. The call sign, it slipped out. Habit, reflex, but the effect was instant. The younger pilot staggered back. No, that's not possible. Ghost is dead. We buried her. I saw the wreckage. The crowd murmured. The armed perimeter cracked into human noise. Questions, movement, confusion. The man in the suit's demeanor shifted. Calm no longer. He was typing furiously into a tablet, not observing, reacting. The lead pilot turned back to the tail number, whispering something like a prayer. 3 years ago, Syria. She saved us. Maria froze. She saved our entire squadron, he said. Came out of nowhere, blew through an enemy convoy like it was nothing, then disappeared. You died, he added, looking at her as if seeing a ghost. That warthog was destroyed. You were confirmed, Kia. Maria's breath caught. No, she said, quietly. That wasn't me. I've never been to Syria. I was in Nevada, training, March 15th, 2022. I remember. It was my birthday. But her words felt thin now, hollow against what was unfolding in front of her. The younger pilot, Captain Chun, she learned, nodded slowly. Eyes still locked on the aircraft. We were there, he said. We were hit bad. S-hums everywhere. We were going to die. Then your 10 appeared. No radio, just fury. First pass took out the SAM site. Second pass, their entire vehicle column. Then, tracers. You were bracketed, but you didn't leave. Maria's heart pounded. She shouldn't remember it, but now she could feel it. The vibration of the GAU-8 cannon. The sandstorm outside her canopy. The weight of death in the sky, the lead. Pilot Morrison lowered his voice. The last words we heard before you went dark were, "Package delivered, good hunting." Then, wreckage, no body, just fire. They buried an empty coffin at Arlington. Maria nearly collapsed. Her knees buckled, but she held, because somewhere inside, something was waking up. Not a memory, a second life. What if the memories that haunted you weren't dreams, but echoes? Maria stood in a still circle of men who thought she was dead. Dust swirled at their feet, kicked by winds that couldn't blow away the weight in the air. Colonel Jake Morrison's voice had softened now, trembling beneath the memory. "We gave you full honors, taps, flyover, folded flag." Your mother held it in shaking hands. She felt her stomach turn. Her mother. That call 3 years ago, the one she brushed off. Her mother had been crying, babbling about a nightmare, a casket, a funeral. Maria told her it was nothing. But her mother had known. Somehow, she had known. She wasn't just mourning a dream. She was mourning a version of her daughter that had actually died. The suited man stepped closer now. His voice dropped low, but the weight in it carried far. "Captain Vasquez," he said, "I need you to account for every day of the last 3 years, every mission, every assignment, because according to our records, you ceased to exist on March 15th, 2022. Maria didn't respond because part of her already knew the gap in her records, the black hole she was told to ignore, the assignments where no paperwork followed, the memories that didn't line up with her mission logs. She had written it off as stress, as compartmentalization, standard military fog. But now it felt like something far worse, quantum fog. "What I'm about to tell you," the suited man said, "sounds impossible, but I need you to listen carefully." He took a slow breath. "My name is Director Samuel Hayes, Defense Intelligence Agency. You were part of a program called Project Looking Glass." The moment he said the name, her skin prickled, deep, in a way she couldn't explain, like remembering a dream right before waking. "It was an experiment," he said. "Temporal reconnaissance, consciousness projection, quantum-linked aircraft systems. You volunteered. You were briefed, then scrub it." Maria's throat tightened. She remembered now. Not clearly, not like a flashback, more like a scent in the air, a shiver in her bones. They called it the Ghost Protocol. Hayes said, that name, that cursed name. She'd seen it stamped on files, whispered during briefings. Dismissed as code for secret ops, but it wasn't just a name. It was what she became. Hayes continued, his voice measured like he was walking her, and himself, through something beyond understanding. The tech was theoretical. Quantum entanglement projecting pilot consciousness into a mirrored aircraft deployed in hostile territory. You stayed physically in Nevada, but your awareness, your combat instincts were piloting another, a 10 in Syria. Maria stared. At her warthog, at its familiar scarring, the faded paint, the peculiar responsiveness she'd never been able to explain. What if it wasn't just her machine? What if it was her echo? She sat down, hard, on the tarmac. Her legs gave out, not from weakness, but from the unbearable weight of truth. You are meant to engage, Hayes said, kneeling beside her. The Syria flight was a recon. Run, just a test. But when Morrison's squadron came under fire, your quantum consciousness made a choice. You responded. You saved lives. And when that aircraft was destroyed, the link shattered. Morrison spoke again, his voice raw. You died saving us. We saw it. Hayes nodded. The you in Syria did. The quantum version. But the original consciousness survived here. You. Only the trauma fractured your memories, created dissonance to protect you. Maria's heart pounded like the roar of turbines. She remembered the dreams, the fire, the sand, the screening metal. She thought they were nightmares, but they were pieces. Pieces of a death she lived through. She looked up at the two pilots. "Morrison, Chun, I don't understand," she said, her voice hoarse. "If that wasn't my A-10, how does this one have the same tail number?" Hayes paused. After the Syrian incident, the aircraft's identity tag AF8-10965 was quietly reassigned, symbolic, they said, a tribute to the fallen. But the moment you stepped back into that machine, everything returned. It was more than symbolic. It was the same aircraft, its quantum twin, its resonance. Her ghost was still alive in the circuits. She looked back at her warthog. Its skin felt different now. Not mechanical, not even emotional, spiritual. Two versions of D versions of the same machine. Two versions of her, one that died, one that lived. And now, they were merging. What do you do when two versions of yourself collide, and only one remembers the fire? Maria stood again, slowly this time, not out of weakness, but reverence. The weight of her own presence felt foreign now, like walking in boots that had already marched to death and somehow come back. Colonel Morrison stepped forward, eyes still locked on her like she might vanish again. "That second pass," he said, voice rough. "When you took out the motor pool, you should have pulled out. The SMs had you bracketed. We all heard the lock-on warnings." Maria didn't answer. She didn't need to. The memories were coming faster now, clearer. No longer dreams or fragments. They were. There's the low hum of the A-10, the rattling roar of the GAU-8 cannon vibrating through her ribs. The dust, the tracers, the enemy below so close, she could see the whites of their eyes before unleashing fury. She remembered choosing not to climb, not to escape. She stayed, because leaving meant death for the men on the ground. "You saved us," said Captain Chun. "You gave us a hole to exfil out. I watched your bird take hits that should have torn it apart, but you held it together. Somehow." Maria closed her eyes. She didn't remember the end, not clearly, just a sensation. Falling. Then silence. Hayes stepped beside her, watching the desert horizon like it held answers. "After the wreckage was found, the program was shut down," he said. The quantum link had never been tested under live-fire conditions. The feedback loop from the destruction should have killed you instantly. Instead, he added, voice lowering, you slipped into deep compartmentalization. Your mind absorbed both versions of reality, one where you lived, and one where you died. The memories were fractured, hidden, but they never left. Maria whispered, barely audible. "I've been dreaming of her death for 3 years." Hayes nodded. "Because it was your death, just not all of you." Silence. Not one person moved. Even the snipers, long descended from their positions, stood still, as if listening for something beyond sound, as if bearing witness to a moment that wasn't meant to happen. A woman rising from her own grave. "We kept your missions going," Hayes said quietly. "Classified, isolated. You were useful. Your altered state gave you access to instincts and intelligence most pilots don't possess. You were intuitive. But now, the quantum wall is breaking down. The memories are bleeding through." Maria looked at him, something sharp rising in her throat. "You knew. We suspected," he admitted. "But we didn't know the full extent. Until today." She took a step toward him, her boots heavy on the tarmac. "You used me after I died. We didn't expect you to survive," he said. "No one did." That truth hung there, bold and unblinking. They buried her because they believed she was gone. They kept her alive because they didn't know what else to do. "There's more," Hayes said. "Something we never explained to your family, to anyone." He pulled a small device from his jacket, a data slate, and tapped its surface. A moment later, holographic footage played above it, grainy thermal imaging from a drone feed. Maria recognized the terrain instantly. Syria. It was her bird in frame. AFA 10965, flying impossibly low, spitting rounds, cutting through armored columns like paper. There, clear as day, was her ghost, and then silence. A flash, static gone. That's all that was recovered, Hayes said. It confirmed the impossible. The aircraft moved like it had a living pilot, but it never once responded to hails, not even distress calls, Morrison added, his voice thick. We thought she couldn't hear us. Now we know. She wasn't hearing us. Maria watched her own death on replay, her breath shallow. Then she turned away. She looked at her own hands. These hands had touched both realities, one that died to protect others, one that lived with no memory why, and both were hers. How do you mourn a version of yourself the world buried without asking if you wanted to come back? Maria sat alone inside the hangar now, away from the heat, away from the stairs, but not away from the truth. She could still feel it pressing in. Behind her eyes, the two pilots, Morrison and Chun, were somewhere outside, still circling the mystery like it might bite again. And Director Hayes. He was still watching her, always watching. She didn't blame him. She didn't even blame herself. But something deeper than memory was rising, grief, not just for what she'd forgotten, but for what she'd become because of it. Captain Vasquez, we need you to walk us through everything you remember, every mission since that day. Hayes' voice echoed off the concrete walls. But how do you describe something you lived, but weren't supposed to feel? She looked up, slow, steady. Do you remember what it felt like? The moment they told you you were dead? Hayes paused. His tablet clicked off. I wasn't told, he said. I read it in a summary report. It was clean, sanitized, one paragraph. And then? She asked. Then we moved on. Maria nodded. Of course they did. But she didn't. Every mission since Syria had felt off, mechanical, like she was flying in a dream she couldn't wake up from. Her instincts sharper than ever, her reactions inhuman. There were moments she moved before threats even appeared. She'd chalked it up to training, but now she knew it wasn't just instinct. It was memory. Memory her mind wasn't ready to show her. Not until now. I want to see it. She whispered. Hayes frowned. See what? The wreckage. There's nothing left. Just debris and dust. Then I want to see the report. He hesitated. Why? He finally asked. Maria stood. Slowly. Each movement felt deliberate now, as if she were anchoring herself in a reality that still felt thin. Because if I'm going to bury her properly, I need to know what part of me died out there. Silence. Then Hayes nodded. He handed her the data slate. And for the next few hours, Maria sat alone, reading the story of her own death. The after-action reports, the images of the crash site, scorched fuselage, no identifiable remains, partial DNA, inconclusive, flight data corrupted, black box destroyed. They had no proof of life, only evidence of violence. And they wrote the ending. For her, one line stood out like a blade. Pilot presumed Kier, body unrecoverable, aircraft designation retired with honors. She closed the tablet. It felt like reading the obituary of a stranger who wore her face. When she walked out into the fading desert light, the mood had shifted. Morrison stood alone now, staring at her bird, at the scars. The paint, the number. Chun paced nearby, restless. There's something else, Chun said suddenly, turning to her. Something we never told anyone. Maria didn't speak. She let the silence invite truth. During the mission in Syria, we tried hailing you a dozen times. Emergency channels, open frequencies, direct comms. But you never responded. Not even a click. He glanced at Morrison, then back to her. It was like you weren't even there. Maria felt her pulse spike, like my body was flying on autopilot? Chun shook his head. No, like you were there. But in a different world, we could see you, We just couldn't reach you. Hayes stepped forward now, voice cautious. We believe the quantum interface created a dual-state awareness. Two conscious presences in parallel realities, one in Syria, one here. Maria's eyes narrowed. So, I lived both lives. Yes, Hayes said, but only one of them remembered. The implications hit hard. She had died, not metaphorically, not spiritually, but literally. A version of her, the version that had fought through that sandstorm, that destroyed an entire convoy, that refused to eject, had died. And this version? She was living on borrowed memory, borrowed time. She wasn't just a ghost to the others. She was a ghost to herself, and somehow that hurt most of all. The strange thing about dying is that sometimes you only realize it afterward. Maria stood before her warthog like she was meeting it for the first time. Not the first time she flew it, the first time she saw it, really saw it. Its skin was warm but proud, patched and painted over too many times. But in between the usual scars were marks that didn't make sense, patterns, memories. The charred seams where shrapnel had struck, the heat scoring from close proximity missile blasts. Things she was told happened during aggressive training exercises. But now she remembered. Not simulations. Combat, live fire, death. This aircraft is quantum linked to the one that burned in Syria, she murmured. Director Hayes stepped beside her, arms folded, eyes cautious. The signatures matched, he said. We thought it was a fluke, a data echo. Now we know it was a tether. You gave this tail number to a different A10 after I died, she said flatly. To honor me. Yes, but the moment I touched it, she came back. Hayes didn't reply. There was nothing to say. Maria looked up at the tail. A F8-10965. She'd never really questioned it. Pilots get rotated through aircraft all the time. But now she knew why this one always felt different. Why it flew like it anticipated her hands. Why it felt like it remembered her, because it did. And she remembered it. Two lives, split across a quantum thread, were finally knitting themselves together. But that thread was fraying. We have a problem, Hayes finally said. Your mind is beginning to merge those memories. Full synchronization. Why is that a problem? Maria asked. Because your brain wasn't meant to hold both realities. The version of you that fought and died was forged in seconds. High stress, pure instinct, all of that experience, trauma, adrenaline, combat data, is now flooding your central neural network. Maria looked at him calmly. Translation? If we don't intervene, the overload could collapse your cognitive function. You'll lose all sense of identity, of time, of which life was yours. She took a long breath, letting it settle in her chest. So you're telling me I'm a walking glitch? Hayes frowned. No, I'm telling you you're the proof that it worked. And also, why we'll never do it again. Maria walked slowly across the tarmac, past the stunned pilots, past the shadow of the control tower, toward the perimeter fence, toward the silence. That's when Morrison caught up. You're not a glitch, he said, voice rough. You're the reason I'm standing here. She stopped, looked at him. Then tell me something, Colonel. If I hadn't landed today, if I stayed in the air, would you have shot me down? Morrison didn't answer. Right away, then, I would have tried to stop it. But would you have followed orders? He swallowed hard. Yes, that was the truth, and Maria didn't hate him for it. Because in his world, she was a threat. A ghost in the sky, flying without clearance, breaking every protocol. I was just doing my job, she whispered. So, were you? He nodded, slowly, painfully. She looked away. That's the part no one talks about, right? Doing your job. And still bearing the cost. She stepped past him. The wind picked up, dry, scratchy, full of heat and memory. She could feel her mind splitting even now, a flicker in her vision, a sound that didn't belong here, Syrian. Wind instead of Nevada, sand instead of dust, the echo of cannon fire, a voice in Arabic shouting commands. Then it was gone, like a ripple in water. "We need to get you to a secure facility," Hayes said. "Medical scans, full neural mapping. We don't know how long you have before the merge completes, and when it does." He paused. "You'll either remember everything or lose everything." Maria turned back to her aircraft, the beast that refused to die. Just like her. "Let it finish," she said. Hayes blinked. "What?" "The merge. Don't stop it. Don't sedate me. Don't monitor me into numbness." "Maria, this isn't that woman in Syria? She earned her memories. She saved lives. She died for this country, and I'm tired of leaving her in the dark." A long silence. Then Hayes nodded. It was the first time he looked at her not like an asset, but like a person coming home. What happens when the war ends, but the battlefield still lives inside you? The facility was quiet now. Not in a tactical sense, not like earlier, when soldiers moved in rehearsed rhythms and snipers held their breath. No, this was a different kind of silence, one that settled over everyone like fog, like respect, like grief. Maria lay in a medical room tucked beneath the desert floor. The walls were thick with classified silence, and the air was cold despite the furnace above. They had connected her to neural monitors. Readouts flickered like confused heartbeats. Her mind was shifting, not breaking, not fracturing, merging. She was remembering everything. Every flare-lit pass over the Syrian hills. Every scream over the coms. Every command she issued, even though no one could hear her. Package delivered, good hunting. That was the last thing she said before she died. And now it echoed inside her like the final line of a story she had never gotten to finish. Morrison and Chun had taken shifts outside the room, silent sentinels to the impossible. They barely spoke. What could they say? They had buried her. Now they were watching her resurrect. Hayes entered quietly, data slate in hand, but he didn't look at it. He looked at her. "How much do you remember?" he asked. Maria didn't open her eyes, but her voice was steady. "All of it. Even the end?" "Especially the end." Hayes sat down, a rare crack in his composed exterior showing in the way he exhaled. "This was never supposed to happen," she smiled faintly. "Most things worth remembering never are." The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was full, like two people sitting beside the wreckage of a storm and realizing they both survived. "You weren't just a test pilot," Hayes finally said. "You became something else." "What?" she asked. "A proof of concept, a myth in real time, the soldier we didn't deserve and couldn't understand." Maria sat up slowly, peeling the sensors from her temples. The air felt clearer now, like something had lifted inside her. The fog was gone. The grief was quieter. What was left was clarity. "I'm not a myth," she said. "I'm just what happens when the mission outlives the orders." Hayes nodded slowly. "There's a final decision to be made." She looked at him. "About me?" "About how we write the ending." That stung. She'd had enough of others writing her endings. Maria stood, her boots hitting the cold tile like punctuation marks. "You don't need to write it," she said. "You just need to remember it." "Remember what?" She turned to the mirror on the far wall. For a moment, she swore she saw her reflection. Twice. One in uniform, battle-scarred and dust-covered, one in flight gear, wind-whipped and bleeding. Then it was gone. Just her, whole. "Remember that." "Sometimes," she said, "we lose people who never really leave. And sometimes they come back not to be heroes." She looked him straight in the eyes. "But to remind you who you asked them to become." Hayes said nothing. He didn't need to, because in that moment, standing beneath a desert that hid everything, she had just reminded the war machine of its debt. To her, to all of them. Some legends are built on metals, others on silence. The sun was setting over the Nevada desert when Maria walked back to her warthog. Alone, no cameras, no ceremony. Just the hum of cooling metal and the wind stirring dust into the red glow of twilight. The same aircraft, a F-8-10965, waited for her like it had always known she'd return, or maybe never left. Morrison stood at the edge of the tarmac, watching her approach. This time, he didn't flinch. He didn't look at the tail number. He looked at her, and he nodded. A slow, deliberate nod, not one of command, not protocol, but respect. Chun stood beside him, helmet tucked under one arm. His expression was somewhere between reverence and disbelief. "You were real," he said, "that day. That wasn't just a lucky break. You were there." Maria gave the smallest smile. "I was always there." They didn't ask for more, because some answers don't need to be spoken. Some truths are meant to be felt, like the roar of a cannon in a sandstorm, or the breath you take before saying goodbye to a life that's already ended. Hayes approached next, slower. Tablet off, hands empty. "They want to know what to put on your file," he said. "Whether we reinstate your status, or—" She cut him off gently. "Erase it. Are you sure?" Maria looked up at the sky, that vast, empty blue that held too many secrets. "I wasn't supposed to come back. Not really. Let the myth stay. Let her rest." Hayes hesitated, then gave a rare, almost imperceptible nod. He understood. They wouldn't fill in the blanks. They would leave them. She turned to her warthog. The old beast looked tired, like her, but still standing. "Where will you go?" Hayes asked. Maria paused. "Somewhere quiet," she said. "Somewhere I don't have to be her anymore. You'll always be her." "I know," she said. "But maybe I can learn how to be me again, too." The silence returned, not empty. Full, heavy, sacred. She climbed the ladder, each step echoing like footsteps on a bridge between two worlds. At the top, she paused, not to look back, but to listen. And in that stillness, she heard it. Not a voice, not a sound, but a knowing. The kind that only comes after death and survival have shaken hands. "Ghost isn't a name," she whispered. "It's a promise." Then she vanished into the cockpit. A few minutes later, the engine spun to life. No escort, no orders, no destination. Filed. Just a ghost in the sky, fading into the amber dusk. And somewhere in the classified records that would never see daylight. A note was quietly added. Subject completed reintegration, quantum residual stable. Tail number retired permanently. Recommendation: no further action, but for those who had seen her, for those who had lived because she didn't let herself die. They carried the story like a quiet gospel. A pilot who returned from the dead. A number that froze men in their boots. A mission that never ended, only evolved. She was never meant to be remembered, but she would never be forgotten, because in war, not every hero walks away. Some fly, and some fly twice. Sometimes, dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts.